Being injured sucks, and I'm here to tell you how I'm dealing with it. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Super pumped to be back. I'm gonna take you through a little bit of how I've been dealing with my injury. There's three things that I want to cover when it comes to managing the process of going through an injury. As a physiotherapist, a coach, this is something I help people with all the time. And the fact that I'm going through it right now and struggling, to be honest, is interesting to think about. And I want to share a little bit of the journey with you, because I think a lot of times people think that, you know, coaches or healthcare professionals are immune to these things and that we just navigate them so beautifully. That is the farthest thing from the truth, and I'm here to tell you that firsthand. I think the reason why I'm able to actually help people to the level that I can is because I've gone through some of these things myself, and I still go through them and learn new things as I go through the process. So this is going to be a lot of me sharing my thoughts, so hang in there. I think there will be some value for this episode. And maybe at the end, I'll tell you a little bit of where I'm headed in the path that I'm on. And it is a positive direction. But before we dive into all that stuff, last year was probably the most fit and successful year of my physical life. I ran a ton. I hit a ton of marathon PRs, half marathon PRs, big marathon workouts, probably the most endurance fitness I've ever had in my life. And there's moments of time where I was feeling absolutely invincible. And if you guys have trained at a very high level or pushed your body or have had success in just doing some hard things, you know that feeling that I'm talking about. And I loved every single second of it. And for the most part, last year I was injury free. Heading into the Toronto Marathon, where I was attempting to run sub 3, I documented this whole process. You guys should check out my videos leading into that. I made a ton of content around it. Leading into that race, I started to get a little bit of leg pain. Nothing that I was worried about. It was the week of the race. Phantom injuries, all that fun stuff starts going through your head. And by the time I got out on race day, I honestly didn't have any pain, discomfort going on. Ran the race. Obviously didn't hit my goal, blew up, but still had a really great time. Following that, I was dealing with more of that leg pain, and knowing what I do know about injuries, I was very concerned that I had a stress fracture in my femur. So I tried to not just like spiral too much, because, you know, the more that you know, the harder it can be sometimes, and you start going down these rabbit holes. But I reached out to a mentor of mine, had a discussion with him. I learned a ton from him around how to identify, treat, and manage bone stress injuries. This is something that I do as a clinician. And we were talking, and there was probably a high likelihood that I had some type of stress reaction, which is essentially the building blocks for a stress fracture. If I would have kept running and kept pushing myself at the level that I was, there's a high potential that I would have had a stress fracture. Now, the troublesome thing with this is that the only way you're really going to confirm a stress fracture is on MRI. It's not really going to show up on X-ray. Even like a bone scan is not necessarily the gold standard, can get missed there. So getting an MRI is the gold standard. And if you live in Canada, you know the struggle of getting an MRI. So I decided that I was just going to treat it as if it was a bone stress, reaction. Take time off running, not go get imaging, because I was feeling better. There were some signs that was pointing in the right direction, and I continued on the recovery track. So I stopped running for probably 4 to 5 weeks after that, and started feeling good. And this is where the challenges began. And I want to break it down for you guys into 3 things that I think are important to think about when you're having an injury. And I definitely had a hard time with number 1. And number 1 is acceptance. Accepting that you are going through an injury and that things are going to look a little bit different. For someone like myself, and I'm trying to be a little bit more self-aware, I love to challenge myself. I love to push myself. I have type A tendencies around certain things. So for me, chilling out and not doing the thing that I love and pushing my body is hard, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to do things really well, especially when I set big goals, which I have set big goals for myself when it comes to running. So accepting the fact that I was going to have to dial things back and take time off running was not something that I decided to do with grace. And what ended up happening was I took 4 to 5 weeks off, and I wasn't really accepting the fact that this could be a longer process than I want it to be, something that a lot of my clients struggle with. And so I started to get back into running after that 4 to 5 weeks. I slowly started to ramp my running up, but because of that old type A personality and that pressure that I put on myself, I started running more than I probably should have. So I started to ramp up my running. I was doing 5Ks, some 6Ks, some 7Ks. These are relatively short runs for me. And I started to push my long run farther and farther to the point where I ran a 14K run, and then I decided that I need to take a pause. And it wasn't that I was having a ton of pain that was similar to what the potential bone stress injury was. It was different. It was in my hip flexor. It just wasn't feeling good, and I was getting frustrated. I was getting frustrated by the fact that I wasn't able to run, which is something that I love to do. It's good for my mental health. It's also my sport right now that I'm trying to have success in, and that I couldn't push myself. A big, standard that I have for myself is to get the most out of myself, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. And when I'm not able to do that, it messes with me. And so I was having a really hard time accepting the fact that I probably need to chill out and not progress my running as much, which is funny because a big thing that I talk about with my clients, and if any of my clients are watching this, I can tell you more than I could tell myself that you need to slowly build things up, and you need to view running as rehab and not running as performance. And I wasn't doing that, and it wasn't leading me down the right path. So I decided that I was going to pull the plug on running for at least 4 more weeks. This was not too long ago. I posted it in our Strava run group, which you guys should join that. We're going to get the run club back going when I can run again, that I needed to take some time off because this injury was not going well. This was my step into acceptance. So I did that, which I think was the right thing to do. For me, I just needed to separate myself from running because it wasn't productive mentally, it wasn't productive physically, and I just needed to step back. Now, before we move into the next phase or the next thing on the list, I will have you know that from the time that I stopped running in October to where we are now, my training has been so up and down, and it has been so inconsistent, and it has not felt great. Because I could not run, I tried to fill that void with pushing myself with strength training, something that I love. I will never give that up. And me being silly, pushing those things, leaded to me flaring other things up that make sense because I haven't been strength training or pushing my body in that capacity in a really long time. So I've had random bouts of hip pain and low back pain that have just been triggered from me ramping up my load and strength training because I have no chill. Which has been frustrating because I have not been able to stack any consistency of training from October to now. And one of my favorite things ever is to be in the flow state of stacking consistency of training. I absolutely live for that process. And because I haven't been able to do that, it's been very, very frustrating for me. So with all that being said, I decided that I was going to step away from running. And when I stepped away from running, I started strength training again. And at this point in time, I was doing okay. And lo and behold, I hurt my back. I flared my back up. I flared my nerve up in my right hip, which is the same side in which I was worried about the stress fracture. And that was the tip of the iceberg that sent me over the edge, and realized that I needed to do the second thing I'm going to talk about, and that is ask for help. Now, I talk about this with my clients all the time. I share this on social media all the time, that asking for help takes a lot of courage. It is not easy to ask for help. And here I was knowing that asking for help is the right thing to do, yet I wasn't willing to do that. Fault my own. But I got pushed to the point where I was like, all right, this is not going well. So, I I did a lot of self-reflection on that and realized that I need to switch my perspective on just trying to get healthier. I also had conversations with people around me who are very close, friends and family and people that I have a lot of love and respect for, and just sharing my frustration, something that I don't do well. Even just sharing the frustration of what I was going through made me just feel better. But taking that second step of asking for help, which I think is probably the hardest thing to do when you're going through the process, especially if you're not that type of person. And for me, being a healthcare professional and a coach, it's even harder, I think, to ask for help, even though I know how important that is. It's very silly. However, taking that step was really good, and having that conversation, one of the conversations that really helped me a lot was with my business partner, Will, where I was telling him a bit about my frustration, and we kind of just worked through some of the symptoms that I was dealing with and some of the things that were going on. And I was very concerned, and this is where I appreciate going through this process because it gives me a lot more empathy for my clients. I was spiraling, and I know a lot of it. I know a lot about the body, injury, rehab, all that stuff. And my brain was spiraling to places that I don't think it needed to go. And having that conversation kind of got me back on track and made me realize that, okay, the things that I'm dealing with right now in my hip more than likely aren't the stress fracture or the stress reaction showing itself again. It potentially could be, but the likelihood of that is low based off the symptoms we were getting, which is my biggest fear, that there is a stress fracture there and that I didn't let it fully heal and that it's getting worse. And the area that it is in is not a good place. It's not a good place to get a stress fracture anywhere, but it's a higher risk area. So I think the uncertainty of that was looming in my head and still is a bit. And that was a big mental struggle for me. So stepping out and asking for help, having this conversation really helped me work through things. The second thing is I am in the process of getting an MRI. So I have a referral that's gone in. Who knows what that's going to be like in Canada? It takes a really long time, but that is another positive step in me asking for help. And I think getting that imaging done will really help ease my mind, or at least show me that if there is a stress fracture there, I need to definitely respect what's happening and go down that process. I don't think that is the case, but again, this is the struggle with the uncertainty of it. And this is probably one of the injuries where I think getting imaging is of high value. There's a lot of other injuries that I don't necessarily think we need to be rushing to get imaged, but for this one, the consequences of not treating it the right way are very, very high in terms of the repercussions of that injury if I don't respect it. So that's number two, asking for help. So I think that is a really hard thing to do. And if you're going through the injury process right now, I know I'm kind of a little bit of a hypocrite for preaching, hey, I stuck that asking for help, but you should go get help. But you should go get help. There's a lot of people out there that can help guide you. And even if it's just having a conversation, I tell this all the time to the people that come through our doors, is like, hey, even if we can work through this and try to get an understanding of where you're at, and you don't even continue on with us, it's all good. This is probably going to be of value. So reaching out to someone that can help you, I highly recommend a rehab professional that knows what you're going through, knows your sport, knows your activity, has a track record for managing the things that you're dealing with. You can find tons of people online, social media. You can reach out to me and I can connect you with the right people. I could maybe be the person to help guide you. But taking that step into asking for help after accepting the fact that you're injured is super important. And that leads me into the third and final thing that is needed in this process of managing the shitty aspect of going through an injury. And that is creating a plan. Now that I've accepted the fact that I'm injured, I've stepped out and asked for help. And the last thing is I need to reverse engineer where I want to get to and where I am now, and what is the plan to take those steps to get to that final end point. And that's the process that I'm in right now. And I think the importance of the key factors in having a plan is having steps that you can objectively check off that you're moving in the right direction towards your goals. If you're just going based off how you feel, or you're not really having any benchmarks that are showing that you're making progress, it's going to be very, very challenging for you to want to stick on the journey of that plan. So at the movement, we break it down into 3 phases: the calm it down phase, the build it up phase, the bridge the gap phase. I think it's a very easy way to wrap your head around that. And that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm in the middle of the calm it down phase, in the build it up phase. I'm still dealing with some of that nerve pain. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm calming that down, which means I'm modifying activities. I'm not deadlifting, I'm not running, I'm not doing anything that's going to stress the nerve, but I am still training in some capacity. I just posted I did some bench press, I did some sled push on my Instagram account. So it's not that I'm not doing anything, but I am modifying things to help calm it down. The next phase is going to be build it up, and that's where we're going to start building up the tolerance to load. I'm going to take this in 2 approaches. I'm going to be building up my nerve tolerance to load, but I'm also going to be loading my body in a way that we be productive for building bone health, which is a lot of times going to be strength training. I probably will not run in this phase of rehab, even though I really want to. I think just mentally I need to take some time away from it so I don't force it. And I think I'll know when the time is right to start the return to run process, which will be me looking at running as rehab and not running as performance, which will go through a run walk progression to get me back to tolerating running. That is something that I need to do and that I skipped the last time. And then the last phase is bridge the gap, and bridging the gap between rehab and performance. And performance in my case right now is getting back to running a marathon. I do hopefully have goals of running another marathon this year, looking into the fall. And the other thing that I'm really having a fun time with and I want to explore more is high rocks. So those are the 2 things that I need to bridge the gap back to. The reason I brought high rocks into the picture is that I think it's a little bit more of an easier transition to getting me back into some training. I hired a coach that's going to build out some programs for me. I won't be running in that program just yet, but High Rocks does have running in it, but it's only around 8K of running within the race. So it's a nice way for me to slowly start to bridge that gap back to bringing running into the performance realm of my life, but it's not going to be the main thing, because High Rocks, you have a bunch of other stations. You have wall balls, you have sled push, sled pull, burpee broad jump, farmer carries, all that fun stuff. So it's going to throw running into the mix, but it's not going to be the main thing. So I think that's going to be a really good mental thing for me. And in that bridge the gap phase, I want to make sure that I'm exposing my nerve and I'm exposing my leg to the loads that are going to get me back to doing those things at a high level. And in that phase, it's a lot more fun because it'll look a lot more like training. I will be ramping up my volume, intensity, but I'll still be slowly integrating myself back into training for performance versus training for rehab. And I think it's really important to get somebody that can help guide you through that process. In this case, I'm going to be guiding myself through the process. I have a coach that's going to help me program and is aware of my injuries. But because I kind of understand how this process goes, I'm going to guide myself with the help of my friends and the team at the movement holding me accountable to make sure I'm not doing anything stupid. So I will have some outside guidance on that. But if you're going through an injury, I think it's key that you find someone that can help guide you through that process, because the most frustrating thing is you accept the fact that you have an injury, you ask for help, but then you ask for help from someone that doesn't give you the proper plan to get you to where you want to go. And I think that's a key. Really investigate who you're asking help from. Do they have the understanding of getting you back to the goals that you have? Do they have the track record of doing this? Are they someone that you want to work with? Is it an environment that you are excited to go into? Because those are all key things to moving successfully through a plan. And that's going to transition to the last little underlying piece for all of this whole 3 steps that I just talked about. The underlying piece of it is shifting your mindset that this is going to be a long-term process. I think I fell prey to this, and a lot of other people fall prey to this, is that they expect rehab to go like this. Super quick, super fast, but it is a long game. And if you can accept the fact that this is going to take time and you approach it from the standpoint of all right, I am going to accept that this may take longer than I like, but if I follow this process, if I follow this plan, I stay true to it, I'm going to get to a point where on the other side of it, I have way more opportunity, way more time to do the things that I want to do. The small window of like 6 to 8 to even a year of rehab, on the other side of that is 3, 5, 10, 12 years, whatever, who knows, of performing the way that you want to. And I think that is the struggle for me right now, is I have not had an injury that's really sidelined me probably for the last 4 to 5 years. I had a knee injury that I addressed, and from that point I've been able to really perform at a very high level without having too much issue. So that's the hard part, but if you commit to taking care of this and accept that it's a long-term game, on the other side of that is going to be plenty of opportunity for you to perform at a high level. What isn't going to allow you to perform at a high level is if you are half in, half out and kind of doing what I was doing, and you don't accept it, and you don't ask for help, and you don't create a plan, and you're constantly going through this cycle of taking time off, feeling a little bit better, going back, pushing it, injuring yourself, taking a little bit of time off. I call that the doom cycle. We don't want that. I don't want that. I was trending into that, and I'm trying to get out of it. And that's why I'm sharing this video with you guys, because I just wanted to give you some insight into what it looks like for someone who does this for a living. Like, this is my job, to coach people through rehab, to coach people to performance. And I know how to handle these things, and I'm struggling with it. And I hope that if you're listening to this and you're struggling with an injury, you give yourself a little bit of grace to know that, like, this is hard. But you can get through this, and you just need to find the right people to get into your corner and help you do it. So that's all I got for today, guys. I wanted to sit down and share that with you. I know it was a little bit of a lengthy video, but I think there's a ton of value there. And just to recap, you want to accept the fact that you have an injury, you want to ask for help, you want to get a plan. Those are the 3 things. And then the underlying positive thing of all of that is you need to accept that it's going to be the long game. But that's all I got for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this style of video. I'm going to continue to put out some content around my high rocks training, share a little bit of the injury, progress that I'm going through. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. I need to get back to posting on Strava. I've been a bit of a baby about it because I haven't been running. I'm trying not to go on the app, but I'm going to start posting my high rocks workouts on there, riding on the bike, all that fun stuff. So follow me over on Strava. I still want to become a Strava star. I was making great progress with that throughout my marathon training, but I've fallen off. But I'm going to get back onto it. This is my accountability to myself. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I appreciate your support. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're pushing your body. I hope if you're going through an injury, you're on the right path. And lastly, I hope you're digging deep. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.